November 26th, the regular meeting on December 2nd, and the regular meeting on December 10th.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the minutes that were written on November 26th, December 2nd, and December 10th be approved as written.
Any discussion?
Yeah, so all at one time, Mr. Chinaki.
Yes, sir.
So can I abstain from the 26th? That's why I wasn't here.
Yeah.
All right.
Any other discussion?
Yes.
Crawford. Yes. Klaus.
Yes.
Cat.
Yes on the 2nd and the 10th, and I abstain on the 26th.
No. Yes.
Oh, sorry, Artino.
Okay, next on the agenda is audience participation. Address the council, and you'll have 3 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record. Any audience participation? Okay, thank you. Old business. We're going to be discussing some legislation.
A matter that the legal department and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources and the Ohio Attorney General have been working cooperatively on for some time. I would venture to guess we're at the finish line, but for 2 provisions in the easement that we're negotiating for the use of the properties themselves. In essence, council's going to ultimately have to vote on a couple pieces of legislation. One's going to be a dedication of public street. The other is going to be a land acquisition and transfer agreement, and the third is going to be a permanent easement to provide the public access to a band that's currently devoted to that purpose already. And so, for context, I've spoken since we talked last month. I had conversations with ODNR and the Ohio Attorney General. We are exchanging times for a conference call later this week to button up the 2 provisions that are somewhat ambiguous, but I'm confident that that'll be addressed, and if it's not before council in January, it should be before you in the first meeting in February.
And
So the showboat properties, again, this was another issue that you asked me to discuss, Mayor. I was provided with a considerable amount of information that relates to the city's acquisition of several water lots that we've colloquially referred to as the showboat properties. Based on what I've reviewed of the documents and the land transfers, it appears as though the city owns certain water lots, but there are portions of land, including what's commonly referred to as water lot number 1, and some of the areas to the north and east of that where we'll call it a retaining wall or an improvement has been made to that area. Ownership of those portions of the land is not clear, so the city has to take some sort of affirmative action to determine how it wants to proceed in light of the fact that it does not hold clear title to those portions of land. There are several options that you have available to you in light of the fact that it would require us to weigh some options with your legal counsel. I would suggest that any discussions or questions you have germane to strategy in that would be best discussed in executive session.
okay.
With that said, these options that you're going to give us, what kind of time frame are we looking at? Because I know this has been something that's happened years ago.
It won't be as quick as the Conagra property, I can tell you that. So generally your options in this context will require several phases, no matter what choice you choose to exercise. And some of those phases will be subject to the whims of the calendars of the courts. And so I can't speculate on what a judicial calendar on a matter like this would be, but there's a process where before we would take any action, there's provision of the Ohio Constitution and generally the Ohio Rules of Civil Procedure, which require us to make certain that anyone who may have an interest in ownership of water lot 1 or those areas that I'm discussing where the improvements have been made are entitled to notice and an opportunity to be heard to whatever strategy the city choose to take in this case.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Right.
Fair estimate somewhere between 1 and 3 years.
Okay, and with that said, I know we had this discussion with the city manager and yourself. We talked about the sellability of that property. This is a thorn in the side for that.
Certainly is. You can't sell property you don't own. And it's not 100% clear you own it. Potentially. The transfers with respect to that are not clear that, well, there's a cloud on the title, and that means that nobody knows who owns it. Or people who own it, the people who claim to own it don't necessarily have clear title to it either. So it's not clear.
It's kind of in the limbo with that property right now, not being able to do anything with it.
Well, you can do something with it depending upon which tact you want to take in terms of wrapping it up. But the Ohio Constitution provides political subdivisions like the city opportunities to exercise eminent domain rights and authority to take ownership of property when it's necessary for public use.
Any other?
If I could too, just provide some context for the conversation, I think another important step to determine is, to your point, Mr. Tapp, what is council's legislative intent with that property? For the last several years, obviously, it's been used for public benefit, and I think that would have an impact on what types of decisions you make with that going forward. If it's going to be converted for sale, obviously, this action that the law director has outlined is appropriate, but I just wanted to reference the fact that, you know, there's a lot of overflow parking that's being utilized there, and there have been conversations in the past about just keeping it in a public space. So I think in line with whatever action is taken, the council should discuss a specific outcome strategy for the property itself.
Okay, so in the near future, you'll be getting with us for an executive session to talk about legal actions.
If someone would like to discuss the matter in executive session tonight, at the portion of the agenda where executive session is referenced, you can put it in. You can move it. You can move to go into executive session after all the other issues have been addressed.
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah, I think.
So I would recommend the matter be.
More detail, please.
I would recommend that. There's no executive session on here already.
Yes, there is.
Page 2. I would recommend adding a second justification for executive session. Stand by, I've got to pull up the state statute so we can use the appropriate verbiage. Well, you know what, we can actually use this because it is going to be a conference with an attorney for a public body concerning disputes involving a public body that is subject to pending or imminent court action. The matters that we're going to be discussing would involve imminent court action.
All right. And the next thing on the agenda is new business. We need a motion to refer proposed amendments to zoning section 1123.01 and 1123.02 R1 and R1A to planning commission.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the proposed amendments be referred to the zoning section for consideration, or to the planning commission for consideration.
Mayor, just for the benefit of the audience, these modifications to 1123 R1 and R1A essentially start an initiative to expand the bed tax collection from traditional hotels to also encompass transient rentals. They are currently restricted in the code, so this modification would endorse a position for those properties to be utilized in that capacity, and it would then start off something that will take several months to complete in order to begin the registration program and to start to impose that tax on transient rentals. This is just a reference to the Planning Commission. They meet January 22nd, and then they would refer back to you.
Vote on that.
Hardy,
Yes.
Hagy,
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Klaus,
Yes.
Hack,
Yes.
Martino,
Yes.
Dyke.
Yes.
Next is ordinance 2019-35, which is
Mr. Mayor, I move that ordinance 2019-35, suspend the three reading rule and be placed on its first reading.
please call the roll on this reading.
Dyke,
Yes.
Hardy,
Yes.
Hagy,
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Klaus,
Yes.
Hack,
Yes.
Martino.
Yes. Order.
Ordinance number 2019-35, an ordinance amending ordinance number 2018-36, adopted December 11, 2018, to provide for additional appropriations from the general fund and other funding sources, and an increase in estimated resources, and further approving cash transfers between funds and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Mayor, I move that this be placed as an emergency measure.
Questions on the emergency? Roll call, please.
Dyke,
Yes.
Hardy,
Yes.
Hagy,
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Klaus,
Yes.
Hack,
Yes.
Martino.
Yes. Mr. White, any comments on this?
First, just appreciate the opportunity to have this meeting to endorse this final action for the calendar year, and I'd like to recognize the Finance Director to just review the summary of these modifications.
In order to ensure the city's compliance with the ORC and the upcoming audits, expenditures plus encumbrances cannot exceed total appropriations for each fund. So these modifications, these budget transfers in front of you are to get the city in compliance with revised code and for final appropriations for the rest of the year of 2019. As you can see, the total net impact on total appropriations is zero. So we did have some over and under budget in various accounts we were able to transfer back and forth in order to not add to the total appropriations or total budget for 2019. So these are just budget transfers, and they mainly impact salary allocations between funds because of the turnover and the new hires over 2019. So some of the salary allocations were a little off at the end of the year with the final couple pay periods. So this is to correct that and to get us in compliance for 2019.
Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Dyke,
Yes.
Hardy,
Yes.
Hagy,
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Klaus,
Yes.
Hack,
Yes.
Martino.
Yes. Next motion, before we go into that, I'd like to say, I'd like to offer thanks and gratitude to Mr. Goling. Served quite a bit of time on the joint Parks and Recs Board. And I'd also like to thank the new folks that showed some interest to get involved with the city. I think, in my opinion, it's important to have the citizens involved and offer as much opportunity to people that want to be involved. And it is the citizens' city. So I entertain a motion to approve appointments to boards, commissions, and committees.
Make a motion, Mr. Mayor, to approve the appointments to boards, commissions, and committees.
Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Hack,
Yes.
Martino.
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Hardy,
Yes.
Hagy,
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Klaus,
Yes.
Thank you. Next is resolution 2019-79.
Mr. Mayor, there's several legal issues that are still outstanding with this that need to be discussed in the executive session. So before any action be taken, I recommend that at the very least, it be moved to after the executive session referenced in number X on the agenda.
Thank you.
So do we need to say anything about that?
I think you just wait until after the executive session. If it needs to be addressed, then it will be.
Thank you.
City manager.
I just wish everyone a happy new year and congratulate staff. Some of our new appointments, I think we had a very strong finish and look forward to things to come. Thank you.
Okay, I just have a couple of quick things. I got something from, I think all of us may have gotten it from the Community Action Commission. It's regarding the HEAP program, which is assistance to people with their utility bills. In Sandusky, you can contact Sandusky CAC 419-626-6540. The next communication is a Christmas card from the Weinfelds, 12 volunteers and employees of Huron. This is a wonderful place to live, and we deeply appreciate all that you do to keep it that way. It's pretty nice, appreciate that. That's all I have for this work. We will be going into an executive session. And when we come back, what we may or may not be legislation.
It's entirely up to council.
So I need a motion to go into, you want two motions or we going to throw a
I
thing?
do serve the order.
Well,
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. I forgot it. Get the order. Let's start with Mr. Hagan.
sorry. Nothing.
Just wish everyone a Merry Christmas and safe travels and safety of everyone during this holiday season.
I would like to give my condolences to two families, Mr. Norm Carter, who lives on Washington Ave, passed away recently, and I just wanted, he was a neighbor, great guy, lived in Huron for a number of years. And also recently, Mr. Kenny Majoy, he was a classmate of mine a couple years older, and he passed away, and I just want to give my condolences to their family. That's all, thank you.
Couple things. I'd like to ask that we keep the Dilly family in Port Clinton. I realize it's a different city and a different county, but that could very easily happen here. Please hold them in your thoughts and prayers for a safe outcome there. Their city services are working diligently as ours would in the same circumstances. Utilities, I think the entire city experienced a little hiccup in power this morning, but my neighborhood I know was very short-lived, so I don't know the true source of it, but I know it was widespread, and I was grateful that I still ended up with a hot shower and it was quick. Happy New Year. Please celebrate responsibly, and I'll be thinking of all of our city service personnel that are working and did work over the Christmas holiday, being away from their families as they said. That's all I have.
And I'd just like to say Happy New Year to everyone, and I appreciate the efforts of administration and staff. At the end of the year, there's been a lot of hot, items and topics in order to get this meeting together and to get everything organized for finishing out the year. Thank you.
Again, I'd like to thank everybody for showing up for one thing. Merry Christmas. I want everybody to have a safe New Year. It's tough, at least this time of year, with all this stuff happening, like Ms. Crawford mentioned, the Dilly family. It's been a rough year for everybody and all the safety forces, so keep the prayers up for those guys. And I want to thank council. Like I said, Mark said, we got everybody together. We had a good work session. Everything's going pretty good right now, and I appreciate being out there.
Thank you. Happy New Year's to everybody. We will be going into executive sessions.
You need a motion to go into executive
We
session
need a motion to go into executive session.
for the purposes set forth on the agenda. So someone needs to make that motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to go into executive session to have consults with the attorney for the public body concerning disputes involving public body that are subject to pending or imminent court action for Ohio Revised Code 121.22G3.
Call the roll. Roll, please.
Klaus,
Yes.
Cap,
Yes.
Martino,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Hardy,
Yes.
Hagy,
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
5:51, you're in executive session.
We're back in open session at 6:34. And next on the agenda is resolution 2019-79.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to table resolution 2019-79 based on insufficient documentation to finalize the agreement.
Any discussion on the motion? Roll call.
Hardy,
Yes.
Hagy,
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Klaus,
Yes.
Taft,
Yes.
Martino,
Yes.
Dyke.
Yes.
Good, nothing else on the agenda?
Motion to adjourn. Make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Dyke,
Yes.
Hardy, Hagy,
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Klaus,
Yes.
Taft,
Yes.
Martino.
Yes. Thank you.